A federal agent has been shot and killed in a confrontation with a fugitive in North Idaho while trying to arrest Randy Weaver. Weaver, a fugitive on a federal firearms charge, has been holed up in a cabin near Naples for more than a year.
I need help, quick. We got an incident with Randy Weaver. I want the state police and all the help here I can get.
Through the mid-'80s, all the way well and through the '90s, we faced a variety of challenging issues with survivalists, anti-government extremists. So there were quite a few investigations around the country trying to deal with this growing anti-government movement.
But in Idaho at the time, there were a lot of white supremacist groups that were retreating into the hills back there.
Ruby Ridge began with an investigation by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency. And they were investigating some right-wing militias out in the northwest part of our country. And they identified Randy Weaver as someone that had some association with the Aryan Brotherhood. In an effort to try to turn him as an informant, they set up an operation where he was paid by an undercover informant to modify a weapon, making it illegal.
And they were successful in that operation. They were actually able to get Randy Weaver to provide them with a sawed-off shotgun. And then after they did the deal, they did a takedown with them with no issues.
Ultimately, Weaver decided not to cooperate, didn't show up at court hearings. And so United States Marshals now began to surveil the mountaintop where Weaver lived with his family to try to find a way that they could arrest him.
And that's when everything went to hell.
No stone will be left unturned. We are taking every step we possibly can to, through the use of the phone, affect a surrender.
They bumped into Weaver's dog and his son, and a shootout occurred, which ended up with resulting in the death of a U.S. Marshal and the death of Randy Weaver's very young son.
Randy Weaver has told friends all he wants is to be left alone. But with the sudden appearance of military hardware like this, his one-man stand against the law is suddenly taking on the appearance of a full-blown war.
The FBI comes in when there's been an assault or a murder against a federal agent. So now the FBI responded and brought its resources to try to bring about a surrender and a peaceful conclusion. The FBI deployed the hostage rescue team, and the belief was that there was perhaps a running gun battle ongoing, which there was not.
At the very least, Mr. Potts, the rules of engagement seem to have given the sniper some wiggle room to go beyond normal rules or to justify that second shot.
Never, ever, ever would I approve, knowingly ever approve, a rule that said if they walk outside, you can shoot them.
The FBI recently began to acknowledge its mistakes, its cover-ups, and its excesses.
A criminal investigation is now exploring if high-ranking FBI officials covered up and destroyed documents about the deadly force orders for snipers on Ruby Ridge. In an affidavit obtained by NBC News, Potts admits he approved the rules of engagement, that any adult with a weapon who's observed in the vicinity of the Weaver cabin could be the subject of deadly force. According to agents on the scene, this was later changed to could and should.
As they changed it where if they saw anybody with a firearm, any adult with a firearm, they could engage them. And the HRT was allowed to do that. And it was something that's normally not in DOJ policy. It just fed into this large conspiracy of, the black helicopters back then were a big thing. So the same thing we're seeing a lot of today with the dark web and the deep state, I think is the term they're using. That same militia movement was forming off these things, thinking the government is out of control and they're coming to get you, because there's people who use that for their own advantage at that point.
Meanwhile, the situation is deteriorating between local residents and federal authorities.
It's totally ridiculous. It's a total show of force designed to control people in their minds.
What this is forced to try to scare the average American so he won't open his mouth against the New World Order. That's all this is.
Today, a group of Aryan Nations followers traveled about 50 miles to join the growing protest.
You're a disgrace to the white race!
Disgrace to the race!
Randy Weaver was able to successfully sue the government, which is sort of rare that anybody sues the government because the federal government's very difficult to sue. You have to have pretty clear-cutting evidence of wrongdoing.
Each of her surviving children will receive $1 million from the government. And Randy Weaver is to receive $100,000.
Police officers, like everybody else, can't kill simply because they have a badge on.
You lose your son and your wife, and I don't know how anything could be more traumatic.
For most Americans, Ruby Ridge didn't even register until the Waco incident 6 months later, where these two incidents began to be viewed in tandem as manifestations of perhaps an imbalance in the historic way that the FBI used to more effectively manage incidents. At the time of Waco in February of 1993, the ATF was under attack, as it were. There were those in Congress who wanted to, in essence, eliminate the agency and defund it. And there were, some in ATF that wanted to have a high-profile operation that would showcase the good work that they were doing and show the value that they brought. So I think that was part of the motivation to mount this large-scale operation that would receive a great deal of publicity, and that became sort of a snowball rolling down the hill.
If there's a conflict between the government and any religion, you've got to approach the group from the standpoint of what is their internal worldview, what is motivating them. And Waco just went all wrong in that regard.
Hey, it's John Leguizamo. Click below to subscribe to the Paramount Network channel on YouTube for more on Waco.